somebody from the environmental engineering firm will be joining us shortly. That'll be the second item on the agenda. Meanwhile, the first one is from the representatives of the Emma Bowen Community Service Center, also known as the Upper Manhattan Mental Health Center, to speak about their child and adult services program. And whenever anybody comes from that center, I always point out that Emma Bowen is I knew Emma Bowen, and that Emma Bowen at one point was a member of this community board. So we have a particular reason to welcome anyone representing that center. So the director of the Child and Adult Services Program is Michael Zaretsky, and his assistant director is Elizabeth Hanson, and I believe that they are both with us. And actually, it looks as though Tom Haggerty, who I believe is the executive director of the overall program at the Emma L. Bowen Community Service Center, is with us, and a fellow named Jim Little, who holds some kind of position there. Is he the consultant? What do you want to identify your job there, Mr. Little? All right, maybe we'll just go directly into.
I'll answer that. Jim is our director of operations.
Oh, that's a good title. Okay. Okay. I would even go so far as to say that he's earned that title. Director of operations. Very good. All right. So, Mr. Zaretsky, I believe you have a PowerPoint. You've already started to share the screen. Why don't you go right into it?
Sure, absolutely. So thank you, Mr. Simon, for allowing us to speak to the committee tonight. The Emma Bowen Center has been around for many, many years, over 50 years. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about our child and adolescent services and some of the programs and initiatives that we're working on now. I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Hanson, my assistant director at the Child and Adolescent Clinic, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what we do and our program.
Okay, but and before we get too far, in case people aren't aware of where you are located, you're at 1727 Amsterdam Avenue at the northeast corner of 145th Street.
Yes, that's right. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, I was around when there was a considerable fight over what was to become of that building, and a decision was made to have this program move in there with the move into half the building, and the other half have it be a physical health building.
Wow, thank you. I didn't realize that. Thank you for that information.
All right.
So yeah, first.
All right. So let me just warn you that I'm getting a signal now that I'm going to be shut down in a couple of minutes, but you should just continue with the presentation, and I'll be back. There'll be a gap of a few minutes before I can rejoin.
Okay, great. Yeah, so first I would like to talk a little bit about all our services. As Steve Simon mentioned, Emma Bowen Community Service Center has been around for a long time, in fact, since 1968. And currently we have a lot of services that we provide for the community. We have a therapeutic nursery school. We have a food pantry, Able House, which is a 20-bed community residence for persons in recovery. We have the Rainbow Club, which is a program for people with chronic mental illness. We have case management services. And as part of Emma Bowen Community Service Center, there's the Upper Manhattan Mental Health Clinic. And that includes the Addiction Treatment Services Clinic, the Adult Mental Health Clinic, and then the Children and Adolescent Services. So Emma Bowen's Children and Adolescent Services is a mental health clinic providing therapy and psychiatric services for children 5 to 21. And we have a highly skilled licensed staff providing therapy to children. So who do we serve? 78% of our clients are identifying as Hispanic or Hispanic origin. Over the last 10 months, I can say that we provide a service to 138 children from the Community Board 12 district, and over the last few weeks, many more referrals coming in from the same area.
So what's the problem in the community? It is quite a number of things that we are here to try to help with. But number one, there are not enough mental health resources in the schools in the borough of Manhattan. Schools on average only have one social worker for every 800 students. And most of these social workers are earmarked for students with special needs and not for the general population. Number two, students need to be screened where they are, so mental health issues can be addressed early. And number three, lack of culturally sensitive mental health services is a concern. And number four, many of our parents are quite overwhelmed, so they become disengaged in the child's mental health services, and they need a lot of support. What is M.L. Bowen's solution to the problem? Well, number one, we will identify schools and medical clinics where there is a lack of mental health resources here in the community. And number two, M.L. Bowen will provide staff to go into the schools and clinics for mental health screenings and treatment. We want to place ourselves in the key spots in the community where the children are seen every day.
So M.L. Bowen, we have definitely a specialized expertise in the treatment of children. We have a staff of licensed therapists and psychiatric providers. They all have specialized knowledge and experience in treating children, including providing play therapy for our younger clients. And we know that children and families of immigrant background need extra support and understanding, and our staff, who is from a variety of cultural backgrounds, have a lot of experience in providing services to these families with multicultural backgrounds, and they're really sensitive to their needs, and especially to the recent immigrants in our community. So we have both the language skills and the background to be able to serve these families. 65% of our therapists speak Spanish and are bicultural, and 75% of our psychiatric providers speak Spanish.
So what are our goals? Our goals, number one, are to provide easily accessible mental health services to all children in schools and clinics in the community. We want to be where the children are. Number two, we want to break down the isolation for children and their families caused by the pandemic. We know that many children and families have been locked inside their homes and need attention. They're lonely, they're scared, they're frightened. And we want to establish ourselves as the principal mental health provider for recent immigrants in our community. We have expertise and we have experience in this area. We are ready. We are ready to provide our services to the local community by establishing on-site clinical services in schools in the district for mental health screenings and to set up treatment services. We have begun to contact schools and clinics to assess the needs, and we're letting them know we're here for them, and we want to join in with them to provide these services. So in summary, the M.L. Bowen Center has children's mental health clinics with expertise that serve the local community. We've been here for many years, and we want to continue doing that and growing and providing these services on a larger scale. We will be able to provide mental health services to every school in the community, one school at a time as we progress, but we intend to find out from you where the greatest needs are so we can begin. We are staffed to...
Yeah, so that's our presentation, and here's our contact information. If you have think of more questions in the days and weeks coming, and also if for referrals to our clinic, here is the contact information to the intake department. You can contact Alexandra Pagani on this extension.
So, and just in conclusion, I want to thank Mr. Simon again for inviting us and allowing us to present today. And I want to ask the committee for any support that you can provide us, any guidance and doors that you can help open for us here in the community and here within the district.
All right, well, let me thank you, Mr. Zaretsky, Ms. Hanson. Let me tell you, you don't need to thank me. You need to thank Jim Little because he wouldn't let me. He wouldn't let me say no to you. So I had no choice. Now I'm sorry I got locked out for a few minutes. And but before I call on Sally Fisher, our mental health expert, and a couple of other people who want to ask questions, let me just say I got knocked out at a point at which you were saying, talking about the number of clients you serve in the Community Board 12 district. What was that number?
138, and that's since July we ran that report. So for the last 10 months, but we see also over the last few weeks that we're getting more referrals from the same district.
All right, so I'm sorry. So since July, what was the number?
138.
138. And what is your total? What does that represent in terms of your total total client?
Over a year, we tend to see over 750 to 780 clients per year, plus their families. We don't just work with the individual children, we work with their entire family. So if a child comes in, we will see their siblings, we'll see their parents, we'll see their grandparents sometimes.
Well, this is a child and adolescent services.
Correct. But
right.
We don't stop at just the child and the adolescent.
Okay. Well, that's good. It's a holistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now when we talk about providing services in every single school, which is certainly worthwhile and certainly something that's necessary in these days. Are you coordinating at all with New York Presbyterian, which has a number of school-based clinics in many of our, in maybe a dozen or more of our public schools, which also provide some mental health services? I'm sure there's a great unmet need. I'm not suggesting you should not go into any schools where they may have a clinic, because I'm sure they're not serving everybody. But
Sure.
Have you spoken to them at all to coordinate services?
We have not yet spoken to the persons within the school-based mental health programs, but I have regular contact with the emergency services there. We work closely with the children's psychiatric unit there, and also with the outpatient mental health clinics. I know that they are very overwhelmed with the shortage of services and with trying to get their kids into services. There is a major shortage of outpatient mental health services here in Manhattan and throughout New York City, and long wait lists, and even clinics that have closed their admissions because of staff shortages and long wait lists. So we are, again, here available. We are known for not having a wait list. We're working hard to make sure and in June, we have 5 new therapists joining us. So we are rapidly expanding to meet the need. Particularly with the pandemic, it has expanded the need and has brought it to a forefront in the media and in our community.
Well, I probably should have started out by mentioning that the need for increased mental health services is something that this board has identified for a number of years, to the extent where when we rank our city budget priorities every year, increased mental health services in the community has been this committee's #1 budget priority and the board's #1 expense budget priority as a whole. So we're on the same wavelength. We welcome additional services and welcome anything you can do to meet this unmet need in our community. But just one more question from me before I call on some of my committee members and others. I think you said that 78% of your of your clientele are Hispanic. Is that correct? And
That's correct. That's correct.
is your staff fully bilingual?
The majority of our staff are fully bilingual, including our support staff. 3 out of 4 of our psychiatrists are bilingual. The majority of our therapists are bilingual and bicultural, I should say. So they represent the community. Many of them live here in the community as well. They live in District 12 and in Northern Manhattan, and are very dedicated and committed to provide services to this community.
We certainly appreciate your hiring Community Board 12 residents. Sally, let me call upon you, Sally Fisher.
Yeah, 2 questions. I guess if you could elaborate on specific needs, especially for given the increase in suicide risk among our child and adolescent residents, and also when inpatient admission is required, where are you admitting these patients? Because we have a huge lack of inpatient services for child and adolescents in
Sure.
community health.
Sure. As far as where our children are being admitted, oftentimes it starts with a referral to a local emergency room. New York Presbyterian is probably the most common ER that we use. Many of the children get admitted to New York Presbyterian White Plains facility, but also to Mount Sinai St. Luke's, to Four Winds Hospital,
Yeah.
Four Winds Hospital, Bellevue, and I'm going to say Bronx, Lebanon, although I know it's not Bronx, Lebanon anymore. I've been in the city a long time, so.
Well, I think Bronx Healthcare Center.
Bronx Healthcare Center, right. They have a nice children's psychiatric unit there.
Okay, and if there's a way that you can provide a specific data on those admissions, that would be really helpful.
Okay, well, I don't have that with me today.
But if you can forward it to Steve.
Okay, can you specify what particular numbers you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking at the fact that we don't have child and adolescent inpatient services in our community district. Or if we have them, it's lacking, and I'm trying to figure out what the need is and where we're sending people outside of our district that live in our district. I mean, White Plains is a great facility, but it's not local. And especially when you're dealing with child and adolescent patients, you really need the family involvement. And that's very difficult when it's not anywhere close to where they live.
Right, and I think that's a good question also to direct to, or a request to direct to New York Presbyterian.
Oh, we have.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, but what?
A few million times.
They are the experts. They are the experts in terms of the hospitalization. We probably send most of our kids to New York Presbyterian's emergency room. There are, and even with the White Plains facility, there are often, particularly in the winter months, shortages of beds. We've had children sit in emergency rooms for 2-3 days waiting to find a bed, sometimes released back to the community when they're not really ready to do so.
Yep.
Oh, that's
too often.
That's good information for us to have. That's very interesting. I'm probably going to want to call you and talk to you separately about that point.
Please feel free.
Okay, thank you very much. Sally, thank you for asking that question. You're next.
Okay, hi. First of all, thank you for joining us to give us information about the center. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. So I'm sorry if I'm throwing a couple of questions. I just like to say everything all at once so people have a chance. But my first question is, what are some of the main problems that the children that you are, are servicing? What are some of the main difficulties? I'm not asking for any specifics, obviously that's privacy, but I'm just trying to get an idea of what some of the needs are of the children. What are some of the issues that they're coping with that you all are helping them through? And the second question is, what are the backgrounds of the therapists that you all have, working with the kids? What are their backgrounds? And I ask that because like I said, I know that I'm not making a judgment. I'm just saying, like, sometimes, and I've seen this pattern with adults. I'm not talking about with children because it could be very different. But with adults, like sometimes in lower income communities and the services, they're getting serviced by social workers and others who may not necessarily have more advanced expertise to help people. I'm
Sure.
not saying that those skills are not, needed. I have a master's degree in social work as well. So,
Mhm.
but I also know, having gone through that, we may not always be the best choice. And so
Sure.
just want to find out. And then another question is, are you able to service other groups? I know you talked about, the predominant, servicing
Sure.
of people in this community, but I know we have many different populations in our community, and wanted to see if, whether there was demand for that service from other populations in the community, and how are you equipped to actually, service other populations in our community as well, children.
Sure. Sure. So for your first question, in terms of the types of issues, concerns that our children and families come into the clinic for, probably some of the most prevalent issues are depression, anxiety. There are issues of self-harm, suicidality, depression. We also see a lot of children who are struggling in school because of emotional behavioral issues. And one of the larger areas that we do work in is trauma. We have many children that are coming in with a variety of different types of trauma issues, from physical and sexual abuse to neglect, children who have grown up in families where there's been domestic violence, substance abuse, and we have a lot of families where the parents have suffered from mental illness themselves. We like to refer to ourselves as a one-stop shopping type of center. So if mom and dad need services, they have the opportunity. We're on the 4th floor. They can go down to the 3rd floor and receive services from our chemical abuse treatment program. They can receive mental health services. They can receive care management services. We even have a food pantry, as I think Elizabeth alluded to these programs. And if they are in recovery and need some place to live, we have Able House. And we even have a SAMHSA grant that allows us to provide support and payment for healthcare services that someone might not be able to afford themselves. So one-stop shopping. And in addition, I like to say that we have partners in the building. We work very closely with Heritage Healthcare, and there's a WIC office. So in our building, there are multiple of services available. You come on in and we will get you what you need. And I also want to say that I have a policy for our clinic of there is no wrong door. So sometimes children come in and they may be dealing with issues of autism or autism spectrum disorder conditions, but there might be a 6-month or a year wait to get into specialized services. So we don't send them away. We take them in. We may not be the best place to provide that service, but we make sure that they're not, the term that some people use is streeted. That's an old term. Maybe you're familiar with that, but we don't do that. We take people in, we take them under into our arms, and we try to do whatever we can. As far as your second question about who our staff are, we have therapists from who are just starting out, and I'm sure that would be one of your concerns, and absolutely. But we have, myself, I've been in the field for 34 years. So I'm not new to this, and majority of those years have been within mental health. We have child psychiatrists. We have psychiatric nurse practitioners. We have one mental health clinic, mental health counselor, I should say. And we do have a lot of social workers. I take a lot of pride in our social workers. I think they're very well trained. Many of them have advanced training, have gone to institutes for that advanced training. What else do we do? What else do we have? We have team meetings where we work together to collaborate and make sure that we're providing the right care. We collaborate with care management programs in the community, various crisis services, from the mobile crisis team to HCBI programs. I discussed a case today with one of my therapists who's connected with a big sister now through Big Brother's Big Sister. So we are very much attached and connected to the community and involved in the community, and make sure that we are working collaboratively. One agency that comes to mind is St. Christopher's, where who takes care of a lot of our care management needs for our children. I hope that answers your question.
And
I just had the
like to
last
say-
one, just the last one about, servicing other populations in our community and how you all are doing
Sure.
that and meeting that need.
So okay, so I'm not sure the exact meaning of that question, but I'm going to try to answer that. So in terms of our staff, we pride ourselves in trying to recruit a very diverse staff. So in terms of ethnicity, our staff are African American. I have one Israeli therapist who actually, her specialization is working with LGBTQ children, teenagers, families. She just started a specialized group for trans youth, and which is just off the ground. We've been working on that for many months. Our trans youth are quite isolated. Many of them have never met another trans person in their lives. So now they get to come together, meet other young people, and share their experiences and gain support.
No, I appreciate hearing that, because like I
Okay.
was just saying, like some of the reason why I asked the questions, like a lot of our services up here are very singularly, focused. And
Sure.
a lot
Sure.
other populations, other groups get left out, and there's just no
Sure.
space for them. I even
Sure.
leave if I need
Yes,
things
yes.
sometimes, because
And
there's no
our-
one meeting my needs, right? Who can relate to
So-
me. So,
right.
so that's why I asked that question.
And just to say, I hope this is okay to say, our staff are, certainly we have some white therapists, but majority of our therapists are African American or Latino. With one Israeli therapist, so who's a sweetheart, and has her own specialty that she shares with us. We have therapists who specialize in grief and bereavement, therapists who specialize in trauma and abuse, and therapists who their expertise is dealing with kids who are involved with the criminal justice system. So
maybe we could, maybe for Tanya's benefit and for my benefit, could we just go back, Elizabeth, to the pie chart that was in the PowerPoint presentation? Because I think that would give maybe that would probably more clearly answer Tanya's question about the different groups that you serve.
You want me to share it?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah. All right. So, okay. So it doesn't really, it shows that about 22% are not of Hispanic origin, but doesn't provide, is it safe to assume that that most of that 22% might be African American?
yes, yes.
All right. I mean, I'm sure you're dealing with white people too, but
Yes, a small number of white people, but actually not a lot. And we have a small number of Asians who come to us for services, Middle Eastern, Arabic-speaking families. We did, until recently, have a therapist who spoke Russian, Ukrainian, Arabic, Hebrew, Spanish, French. Unfortunately, he decided to go on to other paths, go back to graduate school. So,
all right. Well, thank you. I think maybe as a helpful hint, maybe the next time you show us that pie chart, just give us a little more detail about, and I would include the African Americans and whites and Asians. All right, very good. Are there any other questions? Oh, there is another question here in the Q&A from one of our attendees, Carolyn Hirsch. For how long do patients stay in the program? What's the longevity of your interventions?
That's a interesting question. So the longevity varies quite a bit. We have clients who've been with us for 4, 5, 6 years, even longer. We have a few children who started with us in our therapeutic preschool, transferred when they became 5 years old into our clinic, and are now in what I would say is the young adulthood, 17, 18, 19-year-olds who continue to work with us. We will see kids in the child clinic up to 21 years old. They can transition at any time before that to our adult clinic if they'd like to, if they feel more comfortable there. Some of them graduate at that point. We also have clients who come in and decide after a few sessions that this isn't the right place for them, or they don't want to do this right now. But I would say the majority of the clients stay between 1 to 2 years.
Okay, very good. All right, I hope the majority stay between 1 and 2 years. Okay, I think hopefully that would answer her question. I don't see any other questions. I'll hold it. I do see that we have 2 different Tom Haggertys, and one of them does not look at all like what I would assume Tom Haggerty would look like. There is an imposter who has crashed our meeting, apparently attempting to make believe that she is Tom Haggerty. You might, I'm just warning you that you may want to be a lookout for that.
Okay.
All right. She's not smiling or laughing. So, okay. All right, very good. So thank you for the presentation. My biggest suggestion to you right now is that you reach out to the school-based health center program at the hospital and coordinate services with them. I would first identify those schools where they do not have centers and try to introduce your program into those schools. But I would not necessarily stay away from the schools where the hospital has such centers. I would just suggest that you try to coordinate whatever work you plan to do there.
I'm noting that. I think that's an excellent idea.
And if you usually we have a representative of the hospital attending our meetings. I don't see him here. Julio, are you here tonight? All right, I don't see him. But if necessary, I can certainly put you in touch with someone at the hospital.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Very good. All right, so we're going to stay in touch. You don't necessarily have to go through Jim Little. You.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. I'm sure you have plenty of other work you can do. So, but let's stay in touch, and we're certainly interested in assisting you in expanding your services into in Community District 12.
Steve, we should invite them again in a few months for maybe an update.
Well, maybe in 6 months. How's that?
Yeah, okay, 6 months, whatever.
Okay, very good. All right. Hopefully they'll agree to that. So thank you for coming. Mr. Haggerty, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't, but thank you very much. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, actually, I see there are 3 Tom Haggertys. Okay. You're really driving me nuts here. All right. All right. Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you again in 6 months and seeing the program grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, and please send me the PowerPoint.
Oh,
All right. Very good. All right. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is a representative from the, give me a second here. From RU Environmental Engineering and Geology, the engineering firm that prepared the remedial action work plan for the brownfield cleanup at the what was the former Pathmark supermarket site on 207th and 9th Avenue, between 9th and 10th Avenues. And her name is Jessica Taylor. I think I see her, right?
Hi, Steve. Yes, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, there she is. Very good.
Hello. I think there's only one of me signed on.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, I did. That other group was driving me nuts. Too many. I mean, one Tom Haggerty would have been fine. So I understand that you are a hydrogeologist. Is that?
Yes. Yes. So I work for Rue Associates. We're an environmental consulting firm. We're the consulting firm of record for the Brownfields cleanup program, and we're working for the developer of the site, both sites. So there's two. They're enrolled separately. I'm going to share my screen. I don't have a fancy PowerPoint.
That's okay.
But I have just some pictures for us to look at least.
Oh, pictures are good.
Okay. So, or maps, I should say. So there's two separate tax lots, even though the parking lot was always one continuous parking lot with the supermarket on this end. It's always been two separate tax parcels. So they're enrolled as two separate sites within the Brownfields cleanup program. The DEC administers the Brownfields program, and both of the sites are enrolled as volunteers in the program, which means that they're not directly responsible for the contamination that's present on the site, but they're volunteering to clean it up.
And I'm sorry, and they're not responsible because there was some prior use there.
Yeah. Right. I'm getting a bunch of feedback. Are you guys hearing that?
What is it?
I'm not sure where that was coming from.
Jim, could you mute yourself? I don't know if that was coming from you, but
Yeah.
why don't you mute yourself just in case? So so Jessica, what was it a gas station? It couldn't have
Sure.
been, it had to be something bigger than just a gas station, no?
So there was a gas station up in the northern corner of lot 21 historically, and some auto repair that was happening. And then on lot 9, there was actually the Miramar swimming pool was there for many years. There was a pool in about the northern half and a pool house, and then a beach area kind of on the southern part, which is interesting to imagine, but they had sand in there. And when the pool was filled in and the supermarket was put up, I think is when they like filled in, and there weren't really regulations on what you could put in to fill these areas. So there's a lot of what we call historic urban fill that's just a little bit more contaminated than the native soil. So the threshold for entering the Brownfields program is that you just have to have contamination that is at a higher threshold than what is acceptable in the state cleanup, soil cleanup objectives. So it doesn't necessarily have to be very contaminated to be a good candidate for the BCP. So this goes a little bit in, and I know the text isn't a huge size, but this goes a little bit into the site history. As we talked about, there was a swimming pool before the grocery store, and there was the parking lot on lot 21 and the historic gas station. There is a little bit of petroleum contamination that we found on the lot with the former gas station, and there's probably at least one underground storage tank that was never registered because it was so old that will be excavated during construction and remediation. So under a remedial investigation work plan that was approved by DEC, we did a lot of soil and groundwater and soil vapor sampling. On lot 9, we took 21 soil borings and took multiple intervals going down to look at the soil cores and see, what the soil looked like. Did it look like it had brick and concrete and all that historic fill material, or when did it go into the native soil that's sand? We put in 3 monitoring wells on each site, so 6 total, so that we could check which way groundwater is flowing, and as one might expect, it's flowing towards the river. And we also collected soil vapor samples. So soil vapor is the air that's in between the particles of soil above the water table. So when you're drilling down, at some point there's soil that's completely saturated, but above that there's air in that pore space, and we collect samples of that and sample it for volatile organic compounds also to see if the soil vapor is being impacted by volatilizing from the groundwater. Ask questions as we go through if you have anything. I don't know if I'm going to be too technical here or anything like that.
Well, why don't you finish and then we'll.
Sure. Okay. So there's the New York State has certain thresholds that they set for different uses of a site and the soil cleanup objectives, how clean your soil has to be. So unrestricted use soil, UUSCOs, means you can do anything on that site, which really agriculturally derived, but that means you could have a playground, you could sit on it at, the soil and play in it and nothing's going to happen, but mostly also agriculture. Restricted residential is the standard that applies for this site because it's going to be multifamily residential and there's not going to be any gardening happening on the site. So we compared to those two standards, and the majority of the site is going to be cleaned up to the unrestricted use based on the excavation that's going to happen. So the results of our remedial investigation showed that the shallow soil is this urban fill. There's compounds that are typical of urban fill. It includes some metals, PCBs, and pesticides, VOCs, which VOCs and SVOCs are usually petroleum related or hydrocarbons that are probably related to some kind of combustion, petroleum products, things like that. While there was exceedances of the unrestricted use, there really were far fewer exceedances of the restricted residential, which is what the state is saying is safe. So even as the site was, there really wasn't a lot of contamination that was over the restricted residential guidelines. The groundwater, which of course is not used for drinking in Manhattan, it's just there and no one's using it for anything. Groundwater was really minimally impacted. There were some naturally occurring metals and some VOCs and SVOCs that are probably just remnant of former operations of the gas station, but were really very typical of what you see within the 5 boroughs. And the soil vapor was the same. Soil vapor is impacted a lot of times by like dry cleaners or gas stations that have like newer releases, because if you think about like a gas station smells because you're smelling the volatilizing chemicals, that happens pretty quickly. So there was the state reviewed all our data, the RI report was approved. The state determined that neither site is a significant threat. They make the significant threat determination, and then there's a little bit more oversight that goes into something if they do determine it a significant threat. So this was good in the scale of how things go with DEC. So we are in the final stages of the remedial action work plan approval for both sites. The remedial action work plan reviews different options for how much the site can be remediated. There's different cleanup tracks. There's a track 1, a track 2, and a track 4. Track 3 got skipped because it used to be site specific standards and no one used it. So I'll go back up a slide. Track lot 21 is exclusively going to be a track 1 cleanup, which means that when the excavation is complete, the soil underneath the site is going to be completely okay for unregulated use. Lot 9, there's a little bit that can't be excavated along these buildings all the way on the western side just because of the foundations in that area and keeping this building stable. So there's going to be about a 7-foot long stretch here that isn't going to be excavated as much as everywhere else. So that's going to meet restricted residential standards. And then everything else is going to be excavated to about at least 15 feet down, which means that we're going to collect endpoints at the bottom, and the endpoints are going to show that we've met the track 1 unrestricted use, and we get a track 1 certificate of completion for most of the site. Excuse me. So that's like the technical information about what we're doing and what the state's going to approve. The entire site will be covered by the new building footprint. There's going to be, I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2 levels down. I think it's 1 with the 15-foot excavation. That means that they're going to be within the water table, so there's not any system that's going to be in place to collect soil vapor, because it's basically building a big waterproof bathtub because groundwater is pretty shallow in this area. And then during the remediation, which is essentially the construction of the foundation of the building, someone from RU will be on site every day. We watch to make sure that they're implementing the RAP, which means that all the soil that's excavated goes to properly permitted facilities. And all of these are, we don't know exactly where they're going yet, but they're typically in New Jersey or outside of Manhattan. While we're there, we are doing community air monitoring in accordance with the community air monitoring plan. So this isn't air monitoring like for workers. This is set up at the perimeter of the site. We always have at least 2 stations. Each station measures dust particles that are going off site, and also VOCs, so anything that might create an odor. And we have an upwind and a downwind station. And the reason that we do that is because they're continuously running, and we're always checking them to make sure that there's not anything leaving the site that is airborne dust. There shouldn't be any airborne dust. There should be watered down, so that even if the meter's not picking it up, if anyone sees dust, we're keeping it watered down. and to make sure that the community is protected. Because we have these residential buildings along the western side that are so close, there's also a special requirements camp, which means that we'll have a third meter that will be set up whenever we're doing work within 20 feet of this area. So probably most of the time that we're out there, we're also going to have a third set up that regardless of which way the wind blows, we have one closest to these receptors to make sure that there's not anything going off site in that direction. The remedy, if there is dust, is usually just water, because they have the water truck and they can keep it out there, and then the dust stays down and the smell stays down. If there is like significant odor associated with the former gas station and some of the soil that's excavated over there, then there's other measures that can be taken. There's like a spray foam that usually has like an orange kind of smell, and they can spray it down on the excavation. It looks like shaving cream kind of, that just keeps the odors down, so that it's continuously applied, so that while excavation is happening, you're not getting those heavy smells of, you know, petroleum contamination. And then the trucks that are on and off site have to follow DOT truck rules. They have to follow the idling rules. And we have this truck route that's in the wrap that shows their inbound and outbound to the two nearest DOT approved major roadways. So I would assume that they're probably going to go over the bridge right away. It depends which way they're heading, but they have to follow. They can't be traveling, you know, on the local roads. There's also erosion measures that say that we have to have like an egress pad that's maintained that has stone, so that the trucks get washed off if their tires get muddy, and they're continually sweeping so that there's not any dirt dragged out into the street. That's a big no-no that the city's always looking out for. So we make sure to be good neighbors and keep the streets clean in the surrounding area. And then once our work is done, once the foundation is poured, the site's entirely capped, and we do a final engineering report, and the site gets a certificate of completion. Each site will get a separate certificate, and that's when the bulk of the remedy is done, and we just go into like a long-term monitoring, where once a year we go out and make sure that everything looks good and submit a report to DEC.
How many truckloads?
I'm not sure how much it's going to be. It's a big dig. I think it's 20,000 yards, and every truck is 20 yards. So it could be upwards of 1,000 dump trucks going out of there over the course of quite a few months. I think if I had to guess, it would be probably 30 or 40 trucks a day.
Which will have quite an impact on traffic.
Probably.
So it's 20,000 yards total. And
Of soil, it's about that. I think between the two sites, the specifics are in the wrap, but because it's 15 feet down across the site, it's a pretty significant excavation.
each truck you said takes how much?
Oh, excuse me, each truck is about 20 yards. 20,
So it's
22 yards.
trucks.
Over the course of the project, 1,000 trucks.
Right.
Let me ask you a few questions. Looking at this map right now, it looks as some of the trucks would head east over the 207th Street Bridge,
Mhm.
and then go on the Major Deegan. But it looks as though other trucks are going to go west along 207th Street over to Broadway. So they are going to end up on local streets. Where are they going to head down Broadway to get to the GW Bridge? Is that how they're going to get over?
I'm not sure. I understand. The way we prepare the truck map is we just look at what basically the nearest major roads are that the DOT approves for the heavy truck traffic, and outline the path of least resistance to get there. And that's what we call out typically. So that's what we had outlined here. It's really going to depend on where the ultimate destination is and which way the trucks go to get to that.
Do you coordinate with other sites that are also doing brownfield so that your 1,000 aren't adding to a couple of hundred at another site?
We don't. I don't think there's a mechanism to do that. I mean, these two sites are operating together, so we'll know what's going on between lot 9 and lot 21. And that's, the volume that I gave is over the course of both of the projects. but we're not coordinating with like the, I know there's a Brownfield site over here too. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
stage they're at, but we don't typically have any way to coordinate
I'm
that.
just worried about the traffic on 207 particularly.
It's usually, it cycles throughout the day. It's not like a continuous parade of trucks. It's usually that they get there to load out and as much as possible stage on site. And they start loading at 7 a.m. and then they leave and they're usually going to New Jersey and make 2 rounds a day. So they're there at like 7 and a little after lunchtime, but it's not continuous necessarily.
Can you find out what's the exact route of the trucks?
Yes.
Yes, I think it makes sense once we establish what the locations are find out where the trucks are going. Like I don't have facilities approved yet right now or proposed, but once we do, we can establish the preferred path for them to take to make sure that they're following the DOT guidelines.
And if they get into New Jersey, likelihood is that they're going to head down Broadway to get to the GW Bridge at like 179th Street. Let me ask you, first of all, I mean, the big question to me is what is going to be built on the site? You said the building is going to take up the entire footprint of the site. This is a very large site.
It's the foundation and the subs. I am the geologist on the project, so I have a slight, a small understanding of the overall project plans, but there's going to be a dig of the entire site for subgrade uses, and then I think it's going to be like a pedestal, and it's going to be at least 2 separate towers going up, so it's not going to be one continuous block. I think that the RAP has an appendix that shows like an elevation of the building, but it's mostly residential with community and I think retail uses on the lower floors.
Yeah, well, the community board was to have been sent the entire package, but our office staff tells me that they didn't receive it.
Okay, yeah, Noelle mentioned that earlier today. So I have the links up here that have the full packages. If you'd like, we can send over the drafts and I can FedEx them over tomorrow morning because I think it was our oversight that they didn't get over to the community board. Or we could wait until they're finalized in the next week or so, but either way, we can take care of that, Steve.
I would appreciate it because apparently the information about the development itself is on a CD in the appendix. It wasn't in the material that I saw on the in the link from the.
Okay.
So there was only a very general reference to a residential development without without any real information about the size of it. So I would appreciate.
Right. Yeah. You know what it is? I think that I'm going to relay, what we spoke about today to our client. The DEC and the purpose of the brownfields is really to deal with the subsurface contamination. So to a large extent, it doesn't make a difference what happens above ground. But, if that's something that interests you, I'll definitely convey to them that that's questions that you all have.
Well, I mean, it certainly is. It is of great interest to us, and the documentation that's submitted to DEC, as far as I know, normally does give you some specific information about the development that's planned there. Even though the focus is on the subsurface contamination, some specific information is provided.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned the buildings that are on the west side, but there are also on the south side, I think 3 or 4 apartment buildings as well.
Right.
They actually be more. I think there are more occupants in those buildings fronting on 206th Street than what you have on the west side. So are any particular provisions being made to protect the people in those buildings? Do you put up any kind of dust screen or something like that to protect those buildings?
That's a good question. So there's not a dust screen. It's going to be the standard construction fence that goes up around the perimeter of the site. The way the DEC and the DOH standard for the community air monitoring plan is set up is that if you have a sensitive receptor within 20 feet is when you have to have that special requirements extra meter that's there all the time. Because of the street, obviously we're farther away than that, but we'll have the 2 camp meters that are always on the upwind and downwind sides of the site and our inspector on site full-time, noting if there's visible dust to make sure that there's not any visible dust leaving the site.
Well, I think you said there would be a meter for the buildings on the west side.
Right. It's because of the very close proximity. The DEC and the DOH set that limit at like 20 feet. Otherwise, we're going to have 2 other meters. And that's actually 2 other per site. So we'll have 4 meters because we have to have, I think the way it's set up is we have 1 for each site. So basically we're going to have at least 2 meters going plus the extra one over here. So we have potential to have 5 meters at a time running.
That there'll be 5 meters that are going to be going to be checking on dust levels.
Yes.
But am I wrong? I thought there were buildings.
There are buildings down here along the south of West 206 Street, or residential buildings. You're correct on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're on the other side of 206.
Yes, because this is the full side to side 207 to 206 the site.
All right, but okay, but they are fairly close. Okay. And all right, well, all right, well, I would appreciate it if you could forward these slides to me. And the likelihood is I'm going to have to follow up by calling you because I couldn't take everything that you were saying.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. OC, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I do. Can you name the PRPs for number 21? Actually, for both of them, for both sides. Who are the PRPs? You mentioned a gas station, and when you mentioned it, you also, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that it wasn't really clear who owned that before.
Sure. So there's not.
One second. Could you tell us what a PRP is?
Sure.
Potentially responsible party.
Right. So when you enroll in the Brownfield cleanup program, part of the application is looking into who owns the site in the past. So we look at the old city directories and the old tax records and the city databases and go through historic deeds to figure that out. It was private ownership. It wasn't like a branded gas station company ever owned either of these properties. It's in the application and it was literally just a man's name. So I'm not like off the top of my head, I don't know who the owner was, but it was like a family that owned it for a long time on lot 21, and then it switched to an LLC, later on, I think when the grocery store took over.
And before that, before it was a gas station, I mean, because, the EPA, the EC, they can go 100 years back and pull the people into one party. That's the point.
Well, they don't necessarily do that in this case because they have someone who is already willing to do the remediation. And a lot of times they dig deeper into the PRPs when they're trying to find someone to do the remediation or to foot the bill for it.
Yeah, this isn't like a super fund.
Right. It's not on that level. It's not state super.
I understand, but we have an issue here, Steve. If we can't do gardening, why we can't do gardening if they're digging 15 feet of soil? That's the big question.
The way we're cleaning up the site is to unrestricted use. So based on, there's not going to be any environmental easements or deed restrictions on lot 21 because of the past use. You just couldn't do gardening because if there was no building there, it would be underwater at that point.
Right, but if you're digging 15 feet, I can't see any tomato plants getting down 15, you know what I mean? The roots are not going to go that down. So why it's restricted for gardening? It's
not. A track 1 cleanup means there's no restrictions on the use of the site.
So gardening would be allowed.
Yes, if this was a site where they were just excavated, a track 1 cleanup means that there's no restrictions on the use of the site. So according to the DEC regulations, that's something you were allowed to do. The interesting thing is that there's not actually anywhere, I think, within New York City that's zoned for the what classifies as unrestricted use. Because at minimum, it's typically residential. So you potentially could garden on both sides? Yes. Except because you mentioned something that, gardening was not allowed. So that's why the definition of restricted residential is multifamily housing as opposed to straight residential, which is single family housing which is, you see more obviously in the outer boroughs and things like that, where there's a single family house with a lawn. And that if you were doing a cleanup, if a developer were doing a cleanup for a single family housing redevelopment project somewhere else in New York State, they would have to get a tract 2 cleanup, they would have to meet residential standards. Whereas if someone was doing a multifamily apartment building where there's, everything's covered over like this site is, the definition of meeting a tract 2 cleanup is the restricted residential standards. There's really, the only area is 7 feet, which is probably as wide as this hand shows up on the western side, where we can't excavate down that closely because it would compromise the foundations of the buildings to the west.
I see.
So
And so
that's gonna be left in
there
place.
will be a commercial floor, the main floor will be a commercial floor?
I don't want to say yes because I'm not 100% sure,
Steve, do
but
we
I
know
think it's
that?
going to be, I think there's going to be some community use. I don't think there's going to be apartments on the first floor.
That, okay, now I got it, okay.
Sorry, I don't know
No,
the
that's
nuance
okay.
to that, but
I think as much as I've read indicated that certainly I think along 207th Street, the plan is to have retail on the ground floor.
Okay,
But I certainly, as I mentioned earlier, would like to get more info about that.
right.
Okay, OC,
I think I'm okay for now.
Sally, did you have another point?
Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned about lack of gardening in perpetuity. Because it seems like you said that part would be restricted residential, which means no vegetable gardening.
No, I thought what she just said, I thought she clarified this question.
Okay,
She just said gardening will be allowed.
okay.
Except,
So that's different than what I heard. And then my other question is,
except for the 7 feet closest to the buildings on the west side, that front on 10th Avenue, everywhere else on the site, I don't know how much space is going to be available for gardening, but theoretically, what I understand from what Jessica has told us, gardening is possible.
it's not prohibited. It's
not
the challenges of having a 15-foot hole in the ground and gardening into that are obvious.
Right.
But it would not be restricted based on the state's definition.
Very good.
and I understand with the 7 feet wide, you can't excavate further. My question is what's left there and what risk of what's left there is to residents?
So the soil that's going to be remaining in place will still meet the restricted residential guidelines. So that means that there's really minimal contamination that won't be able to be contacted by anyone because it's going to be fully covered. There's going to be a foundation wall down the side. It's going to be capped over the top because the building is actually going to extend all the way to the property lines.
Okay.
There's not any soil vapor concerns emanating from that. We did soil vapor in that area, and there's going to be a full waterproofing envelope, which is thick enough to block out any vapors as well. So there's when we do our human health exposure assessment as part of the remedial action plan, we were able to rule out that there would really be any impact of leaving that soil behind. And there will be a very small environmental easement left on the site that says that little strip has a restricted use, and we'll have to come back every year until the work is done, and then probably every few years after that, and have a professional engineer go and look at the foundation wall and say it's not been compromised. There's still this is still protective of human health, and sign and stamp it and send it to the DEC for their files.
Okay.
So that section that is not a track 1, that is a little bit of a track 2, will still have
Restricted.
right, will still be restricted, and we'll have someone checking on it to make sure that the foundation doesn't become compromised in any way.
And then the other question that Steve asked about the residents on the other side, you're saying that there's not going to be any air monitoring standards in place to protect their health?
No, there are. We set up air monitoring stations around the perimeter, but they're based on the wind direction. So obviously we're not going to just tell you every day, I'm going to set one up in the middle of this site and the middle of this site, because if the wind is not blowing,
Right.
if the wind is blowing a different direction, then that's not helpful to anyone. So what we always do is we always set up an upwind and a downwind. So if the wind happens to be blowing, from north to south across 207th, then we'll have a meter set up on 207th, and we'll have a meter set up on 206. And really the one on 207th is in case this turns into a site next door that's blowing dust everywhere, so that we can say, hey, it's not us. We're doing everything to protect us from our site. The dust is coming onto our site. And then the downwind one is to say, look, we've got zero, we're below the threshold. We're being stewards of the site. We're being good neighbors. We're making sure there's not dust leaving the site. So those move, and that's why we don't just have X's on a map. Those move based on the way the wind is flowing, but we have to have an upwind and a downwind for each of these sites because they're separate. So we will have 2
Okay.
meters on each site.
And so do I just understand that what you just said is that you're going to move them every day based on the wind direction?
Yes, exactly. And there's going to be like a surveyor's tripod with a little box on top. And if they're either right at the perimeter inside the fence, or if they're outside the fence, we usually just like lock them to a pole because people walk away with things a lot. But we have them set up and we have people checking them, and we download the data every day and report it to DEC so that they are making sure that, they're checking up on us as well.
All right, very good. All right, I don't see any other questions. Jessica, I want to thank you for taking time out,
Sure.
joining us tonight. I'm going to send you an email tomorrow, or
Okay.
maybe later tonight, and hopefully you'll respond and send me the slides, and give me your phone number, because I'm going to have to undoubtedly call you to clarify some of the things, some of my notes that I just took down. So,
Sure, absolutely.
So I thank you, and committee members, later on in the meeting, I want to have a discussion as to whether or not we should submit any comments to DEC about this plan, and if we wish to do so, we have to do it within, I believe, the next couple of days. Jessica, thank you, and please thank Noel for me.
Sure, thank you. Yep.
And will you yourself be on the site during the course of this work to monitor the removal of the soil?
I'm not. I'll have direct contact with the individual who'll be on site every day. And when it gets really busy, we'll have 2 people out there.
Okay, so whenever a truck is oil out of the site, there will be somebody there from your firm
Yeah.
to ensure that it's being done properly.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a tight tarp or whatever it is that
Right.
covers the soil to make sure that nothing spills out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very good. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we now proceed to our usual section of the meeting, talking about COVID-19. The latest statistics show, in comparison to where we were a month ago, the last time we met in April, the positivity rates in all 4 of our zip codes have basically doubled. Back a month ago, they were all in the between 2 and 3%, and now they're all over 5%. In the last 7 days, there have been 172 new cases in our 4 zip codes. The last month, there's been 1 additional death, and our vaccination rates are still running, of course, behind the rest of the borough and the rest of the city, with the people who have been received at least 1 dose. We're between about 77 and 81, 82%. People who are fully vaccinated, we're running at about between 69 and maybe 73%. And it's significantly behind the rest of the city and the rest of Manhattan. So to me, that's a real problem. Our transmission rate for the last 7 days has been about 50% higher than where it was a month ago. Things are, the transmission rate is actually less than the rest of the city, but still probably troublesome. So let me turn it over to Pauline Ferrante from the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Pauline, you want to pick up where I just left off?
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. So as Steve mentioned, transmission rates are increasing throughout the city. And so our alert system for COVID transmission has increased from a low level to a medium level. And so we are moderate. So we really want everyone to be fully aware of that and to continue wearing your face coverings in public settings where you are not sure of people's vaccination status. There have been a lot of confusion around, federal recommendations on masks, and New York State and New York City continue to require masking at all New York State airports. And, the trains and buses and all city transportation still require face coverings as well. And that includes Uber and Lyft. So I think based on that, maybe confusion, people have been, not wearing their face coverings as often. So again, we just encourage everyone to continue doing so when you're in public. And of course, Steve, you mentioned the vaccination rates. We are encouraging everyone to go and continue to get vaccinated, and also to get boosted. If you are 50 and older, you're eligible for a second boost. I think I mentioned this last month as well. And if you are 12 and older with underlying health conditions, you are now eligible for a second booster as well. So if you fall into those categories and you'd like to go get a second booster, we recommend you go ahead and do that. And testing remains really important because, if you are testing positive but asymptomatic, it's really important that you do quarantine at home so you do not transmit the virus to other people. So testing remains important. Obviously, if you feel sick, you should definitely, go get tested. If you test positive at home, it's recommended that you call your healthcare provider to let them know about your positive test. They could ask you to come in and get a PCR, or, if it's required, or if you are having symptoms and you talk to your medical professional and they can recommend you to go on treatment, antiviral treatment. The city's partnered with Alto Pharmacy where they can deliver that treatment to your home. So it's really important that you get that information as quickly as possible because there's a window of time where the antivirals are the most effective. And so again, if you are not feeling well, please go get tested as soon as possible. So those are my COVID updates, and I have a long list of questions from last month that I managed to get some answers to. So do you want me to pause for questions or do you want me to jump right in?
Well, why don't we pause for just a moment? Are there any questions about COVID for Pauline? Okay, let's move to part 2 of your report.
Okay, great. So with regards to the scaffolding around 600 West 168th Street, I asked our team sort of just to give me more background as to when the scaffolding was erected. So they said that approximately early 2016, the scaffolding was erected by DHS, which we don't really know why it was. And then it was taken down around the end of 2017. And then approximately 2 months after it was taken down, in the beginning of 2018, the DOH had to erect new scaffolding due to the building's exterior facade condition requiring restoration. And so as mentioned, it's part of a major exterior renovation project with DDC. And I know OC had questions about why it's taking so long. And so the reason the work hasn't yet started is due to the allocation of funding for all capital projects in the city and the lack of staffing resources to manage the project at this point. But again, like I mentioned, they are hoping for a start in fiscal year 2023. And so I believe they want everything. Hold on, let me just check. I believe it was fiscal year 20. Sorry.
Last time you told us it would start in
22, right? This year?
No, well, I wish that were true, but no, last time you told us it would start in 23.
Okay, yeah, so it's fiscal year 23. And it's just, so I asked again, I was like, can I get more of a definitive time frame? And they said at this point, there isn't one to share. So of course, I will keep on top of this and make sure to provide you with updates as I get them. So moving along to the other questions that I received last month. I believe that Jay asked about COVID death estimates. And so I heard from our team, and they stated that several studies have shown that deaths are likely greatly undercounted in the US and globally. But in New York City, unlike many, if not most jurisdictions, we provide an estimate of probable deaths based on death certificate information, even if there is no positive COVID molecular test. And even though that's certainly an undercount as well, around maybe 5,500 additional deaths from the beginning of the pandemic when testing was not readily available. So I hope that answered your question. If not, please let me know, and I will go back to our team to get a more detailed response for your question that you had last month.
Pauline, when we, for instance, when I report the number of deaths, that's actually a combined figure of both confirmed and probable deaths, I believe.
Correct.
And yeah, that's, I think I've seen that in the DOH stats. And so how many probable deaths, did you just give us a figure for the?
So it said around 5,500, so 5,500 since the beginning of the pandemic, when testing was not readily available. So those are we account for approximately 5,500 additional deaths.
Okay, and Jay, you have a question now?
Yes. First of all, I think that's good information and helpful. My other question is somewhat related to that, which is deaths that weren't caused by COVID-19, but by people because of COVID-19, either not seeking medical attention or because the facilities were devoted to COVID-19 were not available to treat ailments they sought treatment of, and deaths due to emotional strain caused by the pandemic. So that's an overall question. And my understanding is that the insurance industry calculates every year the number of people they expect to die. And since the pandemic, many more people than the expected number have died. And some of these weren't from COVID, but were sort of adjunct to COVID.
Okay. So you're talking about deaths that were attributed to COVID, but may not have been?
No, I'm talking about deaths caused by the pandemic, but not of COVID.
I see.
Such as people not seeking medical attention.
Oh, I see. I see.
And heart condition and so on.
Right. I mean, yeah, I don't know how that could be determined, but I will go back to our team and ask if there's any way to sort of, pull out that information. I don't know whether or not that is something that could be, sifted out with the data, but I'm happy to go back and ask.
My understanding is the insurance industry does some calculations broadly around the question of unexpected deaths every year. And that was sort of what I was asking about.
Got it. Okay.
I'm sorry. So what you're saying is that the insurance companies calculate what they anticipate to be the number of unexpected deaths, and what you're suggesting then is that that number would have increased by some measure during the period of.
No, the insurance companies calculate the expected deaths, and the number of actual deaths has been much higher than the expected number since the pandemic began.
Well, yeah, I mean, logically, that makes sense. So you want to know how much higher it's been, and that it may, in fact, that number might include not just direct deaths directly related to COVID, but other factors as well.
Yes, like indirectly related to COVID.
Yeah, but there certainly has been an increase in the number of deaths directly related to COVID. But in addition to that, you're saying that there would be a number beyond that of ones that are indirectly related to COVID that would also have been unexpected deaths.
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe we should call up somebody in the insurance industry. But all right. Well, Pauline has agreed to look into that. Okay.
Yes, and then I have more information about the wastewater testing.
Very good.
So to date, we have observed that the trends in the viral load in wastewater is closely aligned with the clinical surveillance data. And so, there aren't any plans right now to sort of partner with Columbia. Columbia students would not particularly be representative of like the entire city, but also DEP has coverage of all the sewer sheds in the city. And so we feel like we, through DEP's collecting and testing of the wastewater, we have that information to be able to utilize to work with our clinical data as well. So at this point, we're seeing that they are still very closely aligned. And we believe that DEP does post their data on open data on the internet. So I tried looking it up today. It's kind of hard to read, but I don't know if we have plans to, post any of that data on our website anytime soon, only because, again, this is a very new project, and we don't want to put too much information out there that could potentially confuse people. And so since we are seeing that they are still closely aligned with the clinical surveillance data that we have, we're just utilizing what we currently have for our public facing information. So that's the update on wastewater testing for COVID-19, and the question about whether or not we would partner with Columbia. And then lastly, there was a question about ticks. So we actually do have tick surveillance on our website, and we do provide information via a health alert. And as of right now, we have the latest data for human and tick surveillance regarding tick-borne disease that can be found on our website. The latest one is from 2018. We are trying very, very hard to get more updated information. Obviously, the pandemic has stretched our team and staff capacity, but we hope to get that information up on our website soon, more recent data. And we also do have advisories. So if we do see, an increase or more, Lyme disease is a reportable disease to the health department. So if we are seeing concerns around, cases of Lyme disease in a particular area, for example, we do send out advisories. So all of this information we do gather. So all the surveillance information we do gather, Lyme disease, again, like I mentioned, is reportable to the health department. So we are tracking it. Unfortunately, it's not as readily available, with public facing data on our website, but we are hoping to change that soon. And Steve, I can send you the links to all of that information in a separate email for you to share with the community board. So those were all the questions from last month. I hope I sufficiently answered everything, and I'm happy to take on new questions.
I think you did fine. To Tanya.
Yeah, Pauline, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, good.
Good. I had a question about, I'm sorry, going back to COVID. I apologize, I didn't ask when you were talking about that. But I guess the concern that I have is not necessarily so much New Yorkers, people who live here. But it's, you know, we're in high now, we're tourists are back full force almost. And a lot of them are not complying with the mask mandates or with, and we don't know where, people are coming from and what their status is as far as, being COVID positive or not, or whether they come from states that are anti vax or anti-mask states and things like that. So it's just like, what can be done? Because it seems, it seems that there is the city really wants these tax dollars. I'm sorry, the revenue from the tourists, but I think that I feel like it's putting our health at risk, because there doesn't seem to be much compliance, with that. Like, for example, I go to, the gym and, YMCA, and, they have tourists that come in and use the facilities and they're not masking at all, right? Whereas the people who regularly attend, who live here, they are. So it's just, I'm just wondering what can be done, because it seems like we're losing the battle to capitalism.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I can totally see how it, conflicts with the grand plan to like reopen everything, and rolling back of the mask mandates and rolling back of, the key to NYC requirements for restaurants and other indoor spaces. Unfortunately, that's something beyond our scope, but it's something that I can definitely bring back to the mayor's office, who ultimately has a say as to, working with the state as to whether or not to reinstate some of these measures. So I will definitely reach out to my contact at the mayor's community affairs unit, just to let them know that, of course, many people are feeling very concerned, especially around, non-Yorkers in non-compliance, but also, our folks as well. So, but yeah, I think, there's just a lot of reliance on people doing the right thing right now, but I totally understand.
And they're not. You have to assume people will not.
Right.
Do the right thing.
Right.
So, I
Totally
guess that's me.
It. Thank you,
I'm
Tanya.
a glass half empty anyway, but either regardless, I just wouldn't assume that people are going to do the right thing, so, and this is scary because we don't control that. We can't control tourists coming in and using facilities and not masking. It's just like one of those things that we just can't,
Right.
So
yeah, I'll definitely email the mayor's office and see what they have to say about that, and I'll be happy to share that information with you as soon as possible.
Shoot, what did?
Everything okay, Steve?
I don't know. I seem to have lost. What the hell happened here? Okay.
Pauline is still here.
Okay, I'm back. Okay. Oh, brother. Okay. All right. So, Pauline, I don't think we have any more questions for you. And Julio Batista is not with us. Janelle Edwards sent an email saying that she is sick and will send her report to me tomorrow. Diane Ashley is here representing Isabella Geriatric Center. Diane, you're up.
Thank you all. Sorry, my colleagues are ill and unavailable to participate. Mine's very short today. Pleased to report that everything's going very smoothly at Isabella. We're experiencing the occasional or sporadic case of COVID. All are stable. We're offering booster clinics weekly to help ensure residents and staff have convenient access to booster shots as soon as they become eligible for them, and obviously continuing on with the education. And consistent with DOH guidance, we are weekly testing staff again. That is underway. So happy to report that there's not a lot to report. we have gotten some inquiries, I would say, about starting to do events back on campus, and for the safety of all involved, while we're very happy to have family and friends back visiting their loved ones, we are not comfortable opening the doors to hosting events. So hopefully the community will understand that this is an important safety measure.
Well, I think at this point, I think we're accustomed to sacrificing a lot of things. Let me ask you, how are the occupancy numbers? Are they going up?
The occupancy numbers have been going up. I didn't ask for them, and I apologize. I don't know. We're certainly not back where we were before the pandemic, but they are coming back up again.
All right, Sally, you have a question?
My question is for Julio, since you're going to follow up with him, I guess, with email, ask questions. Number one is,
One second. Is there anything for Diane?
no, sorry, Diane.
No
That
problem,
was,
Sally.
that was comprehensive.
Okay, all right, so Sally, back to you.
Okay, my two questions for Julio. They just got $750,000 for COVID efforts. And I would like them to report on what that money is to be used for. This was the money that Congressman Esbiot gave them. I would like a report on what that money is intended to be used for to actually address some of our COVID issues. Second question for Julio. I'd asked him last week what it would take to bring the Allen beds back online. And he said, well, it'll take a while. I want to know exactly how long it will take from the minute they get the order to getting those beds back in service. So those are my two questions for Julio. And it would be helpful if at the next meeting, maybe he, as well as Cloth, who also got $750,000 for food insecurity efforts, to report back to us on how those funds are going to be used.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the report that we all received in the mail from Congressman Esbiot. The 750 that you're referring to, I assume, is it did not go to the hospital. It went to Columbia. Something called the Columbia COVID-19 Northern Manhattan Community Mental Wellness Corps. And I've asked Columbia to give us a separate presentation on what that program is. And I was hoping to possibly get it tonight, but they didn't have enough time. And then I asked that it be scheduled for June. I'm not sure at this point. They told me the guy who runs it is not available in June either. So then they asked me whether or not we would be meeting in July. I told them I can't tell you at this point. I don't know. So apparently, if we want to get a presentation about that COVID-19 Northern Manhattan Community Mental Wellness Corps, the earliest we can get it is in July if we choose to meet then.
Well, I'll go first on the record saying I choose to meet in July.
All right. Well,
I hope my fellow committee members.
No, I choose not unless it's absolutely necessary. Because I don't know about anybody else, but I have a life outside of this and I need a break from this, so I if we can help it, I would rather not. If there's something extremely urgent, then yes, but this to me can wait.
All right, well, let's see where we stand in June.
SBI, he said there was a communication, Steve, you said that was sent about this. When was that sent? Because I've been, that. Oh, okay. I throw that out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Steve. Let me mute.
So honest.
All right. Well, it's okay.
Steve, we can have something maybe tentatively in any event. Committee members do not require to attend if they can't, because it's not a meeting that they have to, since it's kind of out of the scope of the 10 months. But I have to say that there are some other community boards that do meet in July. Not to say that we want to do it, but if we have to.
That's true. There are other boards
Yeah.
that have regular meetings in July.
Mhm.
So, but if you want to wait until next month's meeting to see what else we might have on the agenda that might be pressing, and then make a decision, we can do that. All right, so I got a yes out of Tanya, so,
Sounds good.
okay, fine.
More than one thing.
Mr. Mazer, do you have a question or comment? Mr. Mazer?
Yes, on the question of questions for Julio Batista, which I thought was actually the question on the floor and not whether we have a July meeting. I had sort of a comment. First of all, the people explained tonight that they have to wait sometimes 2 or 3 days for a bed for young people in the CPAP unit in the emergency room or whatever it's called until one is available. In April, I had a medical appointment at the Allen Pavilion, and the security guards informed me that absolutely no use is being made of what was the psych unit. It's just being kept as an emergency in case the COVID-19 hospitalization rate goes through the sky. So it seems to me that we have a situation here which isn't being addressed. Not that it's the fault of the community relations person from the hospital, but this question hasn't been responded to us for months at a time, and there is some immediacy to it, as tonight's meeting was pointed out. I don't know if anyone has any further information on this specific question, but if they do, I think we should discuss it briefly again this evening.
Well, I think the hospital has basically told us in the past that what you just said, that they feel as though they may need those beds in the future for COVID-19. And I guess we've taken the position that it's about time that they returned them to their intended purpose. I mean, I've been in touch with various elected officials. I think we were told in one of our recent meetings that Senator Jackson spoke to the governor about this. I think it seems to me there's been a consensus building at both the city and state levels that psych beds are needed in hospitals or in the city especially, but throughout the state, that there's a crying need for them. And I think I think we're going to have to depend upon our elected officials to force the issue and make sure that the hospital complies with what is an urgent need to provide these beds. I mean, we obviously don't have the power ourselves to try to, or don't have the means to impress it upon the hospital, or that they should be doing what we believe to be the right thing.
I believe that the broader board should address this question as well as the health committee, and perhaps leaving it in the poorly attended and somewhat esoteric confines of the health committee sort of is a dead end in regard to that. I think you're probably right that public officials could accomplish more than us, but we haven't actually asked the board as a whole to address the question. Not that I have a resolution in mind, although I think it wouldn't be inappropriate if at the next executive committee, the question of a resolution on the question directed specifically to the hospital be discussed.
All right, well, I can certainly bring that before the executive committee.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't pass a resolution tonight saying we want to force the issue? That we've asked repeatedly, we've got no answers. We know that the beds are not being used. And we want to reiterate the need for psychiatric inpatient beds because of the pandemic being exacerbated. And again, request that Columbia give us a plan for reinstating those beds.
Make a motion.
I make a motion.
I second.
Okay, well, again, it's not Columbia, it's New York Presbyterian.
I meant New York Presbyterian, sorry. I'm just all over the place tonight.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, Steve.
Okay, all those in favor? One second. There is my sheet here. All right, looks as though we've lost Catherine. All right, so Tanya, how do you vote?
Yes.
Catherine is out. Sally, how do you vote?
We can't hear you. You're muted.
Sally?
Yes, a million times yes.
You can only vote once.
Damn it.
Yeah, we contrary to what you may have read about other states and other entities, in this community board, we follow the one person, one vote, and we don't sanction any voting irregularities. O.C. Kaminer.
Yes.
Emily Marte.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, Emily. One more time.
Yes. Sorry.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was a yes. Jay Meza,
Yes.
Wendy Pena.
Yes.
All right, very close vote here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 yeses. Oh, I vote yes. 7 yeses, no no's, and no abstentions. All right.
Do we want to ask the public?
Well, it's a little difficult to do that.
Okay.
All right, very good. All right, so I will draft something and send it around. Next on the agenda is, I think we lost her, is Jovit Joushi, assistant to Dr. Catherine Thornton, who has been doing amazing work in our community, is really through the kindness of her heart, has been having mobile vaccine and testing vans located outside Good Shepherd and Holy Rood churches. Jovita, who is the assistant to Dr. Thornton, did send me some statistics about the number of people they've been treating, and I believe the numbers have been increasing. And I will forward them around to the committee members, and I will put those numbers in the minutes. Next, we have a young man who is known to many of us. We knew him when he was a young man, Mr. Dave Crenshaw. One second. OC, is that a question or comment? No. Okay.
No, that's probably a old hand. Hold on. Okay.
Steve, I did have a quick comment. We've also been getting a testing van out in front of Inwood Hill Park as close as they can get, pretty much every day, operating from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that's a city.
That's a city van.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I tell you, I need to get. I don't know why we're not getting the regular flyers that are prepared by Health and Hospitals, which indicates the various vans. Last week they had 4 vans in Inwood at 175 Nagel, at the outside Inwood Hill Park at Isham Street in Seaman, at Monsignor Kett Playground, and at the Payson Playground. There were 4 vans in Inwood, and there were 3 in Washington Heights at Bennett Park, J. Hood Wright Park, and Quisqueya Playground. For all I know, that's continued into this week. But
I know it hasn't at Bennett Park.
Oh.
I live across the street from there. However, I wanted to make a comment on that. The area in which it was located in front of Bennett Park is the area in Washington Heights with probably the highest vaccination rate. It's the area where it was least needed in the whole of the Heights. And I don't know who's citing these various vans or if others of them have been placed in more strategic locations.
Well, I tell you, but believe it or not, Jay, your zip code is not doing all that well. My
zip code goes east to west.
Well, that's true too, yes. But that's a valid point. I don't have any kind of breakdown between East and West Broadway.
There is none.
But to my zip code 32 is actually the one with the best vaccination rate among our 4 zip codes. And then
it's also the one where the hospital is located and the one where the most hospital personnel live.
Well, I that could be, but I'm actually not too happy with the hospital's vaccination efforts, but and I don't know whether to give them credit for zip code 32 having the highest vaccination rate. I'm not
Don't give them credit.
I'm not prepared to do that.
Don't give them credit.
I give all credit to Dave Crenshaw.
Okay, well, let's hear Dave's report.
Good evening, everybody. I thank you for having me here. I'm going to jump right in because you've already said a bunch of things that's important. First of all, I'm not the numbers type of person to break down all the statistics. I want to tell you my opinion on how it's working on the streets. And what you mentioned about the city's vaccine vans. Number one, Steve, if someone could look into it, they don't even update the website right away each week because every week the vans move. You understand? And the website is not updated. The link's not updated on Monday morning. Sometimes they're not updated till Tuesday or Wednesday, so you could know where the different vans are going to be at. The other thing you mentioned, I want you to notice that all the vans you talked about was above 168th Street. You understand? You're constantly talking about vans in Inwoods and you're constantly talking about vans in Upper Washington Heights. Very few vans have been put in the lower part of 132 below 168th Street. And the whole point of why I'm here for Black Health is that 80 to 90% of the vans that have been below 168th Street have been vans that Black Health and the Dreamers have worked together on. We take a lot of pride in 132. You understand? Every day I look at, not every day, but we constantly look at the different zip codes to find out how they're doing. And when we get the vans, we try to make sure we don't waste them, that we don't do empty. A couple of numbers I can give you is we work so hard with our neighbors that in January, on Dr. King's Day, it was less than 20 degrees and we still vaccinated over 25 children. And then the Saturday later, we did another thing for Black History Month. And again, it was under 20 degrees and we still vaccinated over 25. And the reason why we believe our vans are working is because we just don't do vaccinations. We do community building at the same time we're giving out the vaccines. So while the city's giving out $100, we're giving out sports balls and books. On Dr. King's Day, people got books on Dr. King. Then when we did our Black History Month van, people got books for Amanda Gorman. They got books for Malcolm X. We make sure there's books involved. And there are children who love their books. And there's also children who want their sports equipment. The parents get the $100. Most of the kids is not getting $100. So having these incentives helps the children to come and get a shot that they may not want. And it makes it easy for them to get it. And we don't want them to think of it just as a procedure. We want them to think of it as community building. That's important to what we do. Now, when you mention the numbers, you should know when you keep saying how bad Washington Heights is doing, Washington Heights is still doing better than Central Harlem. our numbers are better than Central Harlem because I'm in the meetings with Black Health and I know who the other contractors are, and their numbers do not come up to Washington Heights numbers. We're still ahead of Harlem. So we might not be doing as good as the West Side and the East Side, but for an inner city neighborhood, we're doing pretty well. And we're not even going to compare us to the Bronx because we're way ahead of the Bronx and we're ahead of Brooklyn also. So what we do is when we do our community building, you even saw it, we're also telling people about when the Parks Department have free passes for you if you signed up on time. All right, when there was the pregnant mothers program that was out there for pregnant mothers to get stipends, we're advertising that also while we're out there. One of the biggest ones we're doing right now is we're letting people know that tomorrow is the last day to register for SYEP. And some people don't even know what SYEP is. And they think you have to have working papers to get into SYEP. No, first you have to apply before the deadline. So what we focus on is doing community building at the same time making our neighborhood healthier. Our biggest change right now is after all this bad weather, we finally got into a building that we thought we should have been in a long time ago, the Malcolm X Dr. Betty Shabazz Center. This is one of the best sites to have health screenings and different activities in. It has high ceilings, there's no steps, the bathroom is right there. We've been in there for like the last 6 Wednesdays, and we're gonna be in there the rest of the month. We're averaging about 15 people vaccinated a day. Our lowest day, we had 9 people, and our highest day, we had 28, all right? But part of this community building is the seniors that we're working with. As opposed to just doing a vaccine event, we tie it in with a community event. And our best community events are helping seniors learn how to use their phones and their tablets to improve their positions. When we get seniors, we make sure everyone has the Excelsior Pass. We make sure they have a QR reader. And a lot of folks don't know this. They got fancy phones and don't realize they got a hotspot on their phones that could power their tablets. A lot of them think if they don't have Wi-Fi someplace, they can't use their tablets, but the power is right in their phones. I'm not gonna mention it, but a certain professor at Mailman, he didn't know he had a hotspot in his phone. He was always looking for Wi-Fi until the teenagers show it. So our technology part of the program is called Learn It. It's called Learn It, and it's getting bigger and bigger. The other day we were at ARC Senior Center on 146th Street, and we helped 80 seniors learn how to use their technology better, and we vaccinated 25. Now, I should mention to you, the secret weapon in our vaccines right now, vaccine outreach right now, is Jovite and Team Thornton. We've been working with Team Thornton. And the reason why we prefer working with Team Thornton is when you get a city van, it only comes with Pfizer or Moderna. When you get Team Thornton, they come with Pfizer and Moderna. They come with children, they come with Pfizer 5 and up and Pfizer 12 and up. If you have a city van, it either has children 5 to 11, Pfizer 12 and up, or Moderna. It does not combine those in a city van, all right? So working with Dr. Thornton's team, we've been a lot more effective because some people want Moderna and some people want Pfizer. And one mother who used to play for me in another century, she brought her kids to it, and they said they were only gonna get the shot if they got a basketball and a soccer ball, all right? And I didn't have none with me right there, but they came in, and then the little girl saw the books. And she said, okay, mommy, he don't got the balls right now, but I want that book. So the girl took the Amanda Gorman book, who's my favorite poet. The girl took the Amanda Gorman book. The mother took the Malcolm X book. And then a week later, they came back to get their basketball and soccer ball. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to do community building. We're just not trying to get our vaccines. We're not just trying to get people tested. So when they see our table pop up, we're like an information hub. Folks come to us, they talk to us, they ask us all types of questions. And it's the reason why, even when the dreamers go back, I'm gonna keep working with seniors. Our seniors are amazing. I'm learning things from them every single day. They're so strong out there on their own, and all they want is for you to treat them correct. So that's where the Shabazz Center comes in. Instead of being outside in the wind, the cold, and the sun, they're inside the Shabazz Center, a place they love, a treasure in our neighborhood that is very much underutilized. And some of the ladies, what they do is they take the shot and then they go upstairs, and while they're waiting for their 15 minutes, they just watch the mural. They love that mural. So we're using that place every Wednesday in May. We're doing community workshops up there, and we're also getting people vaccinated in a place where they know they're going to treat it correct. And I want to tell you something that's going to come up later. As long as we're using We using the Shabazz Center. We always going to call it the Shabazz Center of Harlem. Okay, as far as we're concerned, Malcolm dedicated this place to us by giving his life up for us. So we don't try to waste things. Now let me see. My final thing I want to tell you is, other people got stats. I don't have stats. I got direct data. And what I mean by direct data is I'm constantly arguing with people about why we should or shouldn't do this. And I never force no one to get vaccinated. My role is just to be there if you want it. I want people in my neighborhood to have it if they want it. So we talk about my building. I said, in my building, I got 19 people vaccinated last January. All those 19 people are still alive. They still happy, but most importantly, they cook for me. You understand? They so happy that we got them appointments when no one else could get them appointments, that they cook for me. I know every door to knock on if I'm hungry and the house is a little slow or empty. My neighbors got my back because we took care of our building, and folks was dropping in my building before that. Number two, you have these folks that tell you all these people are dying from the vaccine. I'm always hearing this story. And I say, give me a name. No, it's lots of people. You just got to know where to look and where to read. I said, if it's lots of people, someone in your circle should be able to give you a name, a neighbor, someone from your church, someone from your school. They can't give me no names. And I tell them, I've been out here doing vaccinations for a long time, straight in my neighborhood. Since August, I've been bringing vans into the lower part of Washington Heights. No one yet has gotten mad at me. And he goes, that's because when they die, they can't talk. I say, but what about their grandchildren? What about their sons? What about their cousins? I said, this is my community all my life. If people start getting sick, if people start dying, if something goes wrong, I'm going to be in trouble because I'm on the street on a regular basis and folks know where to find me. And so far, wherever I put up my table, I don't have no drama. So from my direct data, I can tell you the vaccines are safe. I can tell you the vaccines are healthy. I don't need no report. I don't need no statistics. My statistic is I'm on the street corner and no one's jumped me yet. Thank you.
Oh, God, you're unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I wish we could bottle you. Dave, you've been away from us too long. I got to get you to come back to us more often. And I'm very glad that you're in that building, and I agree with you that Shabazz Center is vastly underutilized, and at least you're using it for a very good purpose. Sally, you have a comment or question?
My comment is, Dave, you're amazing. We are so lucky to have you in Northern Manhattan. The being at the Shabazz Center also addresses the concern that Mary raised in terms of the inaccessibility of some of those vans. People can't get in and out of them. So it's amazing that you've been able to secure that space. I wish you could secure us a space in Inwood. And that's about it, except to say thank you to Men's Health, Black Men's Health, for also coming up and supporting our Earth Day blocking event with Senator Jackson.
It's not really me. I use my trick that I learned in sports is my teammates. Word Up Bookstore gives me a lot of help. Mailman's, Dr. Bob Fully Love and Mailman Students of Public Health are always there for me. Vern and Word Up Bookstore. Where do you think I get my books from? I get my books from Veronica and Word Up Bookstore. And so I have new books. And there's people here in the community board that whenever I post something, they share it. So even if we're not on a website, people still know about our event. You understand? So it's never me alone. I got my teammates from Uptown always helping me out.
Okay, well, make sure that you're sending us your notices every single week so that we can help publicize them. Now
it's going to be easier, but I can send you a flyer for the whole month of May.
All right, let's do that. Tanya.
Yes. First of all, I want to say it's Black Health.
Yes.
Just wanted to, yeah.
It's Black Health, yes.
Well,
right.
Well, technically, it's the National Black Leadership Commission on Health.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. But I wanted to say, yes, I appreciate, first of all, I've witnessed your work, as I live across the street.
Yes,
so
we see each other all the time.
So I've seen you and it's amazing. It's incredible. And I do agree that there is a neglect in lower Washington Heights. It's just nothing. It's a lot of emphasis on Inwood and other parts of the community. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't care about those parts of the community, but there is just definitely neglect in the lower Washington Heights. And I'm glad that there's someone, an organization like yours here to actually pay, service that part of the community. Because I can tell you, like, even when this was going on, there were no vans around here at all, even in the height of it. And luckily, I was in a building. I live in a building that they brought in their own folks to test us, to do the things and to give vaccines. I didn't get my vaccine from there, but I would, I definitely got tested a couple of times read in the lobby of our building that was provided, because there was nothing happening. And it was all happening so far away from where I am. So I do appreciate that. And I just wanted to find out, like, how, is there a way to how not saying expand your services, but like, how can we get more of you all in other settings, so that, because I do appreciate the way you approach the work, how welcoming you are to everybody, the fact that you were able to get into Shabazz Center and utilize that space, which is an awesome space. But how do you have any plans to or request or demand for more of your services in other parts, or where are you at with that?
My zip code, I'm 132, so that's where my resources and focus go to. But we do help out. We have people that help out in Harlem, the Bronx, Brooklyn, in Queens. My focus is 132, and I specialize in that because when they say the numbers, I'm like, people get vans, but they don't use them. People get vans and the numbers are low, and they be like, oh, I did 5 people in a whole day. I'm not doing 5 people in a whole day. You understand? I have minimums, and we fight to get them. We fight to always get those minimums. We're calling, we're texting, we're posting, we're Twittering. We're trying to make sure if someone gives me resources, we don't want to get them wasted. And we're sharing this information with the other folks in the other boroughs. How you go about doing it, how your numbers come up. We don't sit at tables. We explain that to the other teammates. You got to stand up. And if we do go outside, like tomorrow, I'm going to be on 164th Street in Amsterdam. I got to bring extra chairs. No seniors and folks is coming and standing for an hour. We have to treat them with respect the way we want them to treat our families. So we bring our own chairs and our own equipment. That's what it comes down to. And we did get a request because Steve will probably love this. We've been requested to be at Hike the Heights this year. Hike the Heights is going to be Saturday, January 4th. So we're going to have a vaccine team there, testing team there, and we're going to set up 10 tables to help seniors learn how to use their phones and tablets better. You understand? And that's the idea, is if we keep publicizing what we're doing, if we keep letting people know more about what we're doing, then they can replicate it. It's nothing I'm doing that's rocket science. You understand? It's just a matter of caring about people and bringing in the right people. And you always have to have a bilingual staff.
And Coach Dave, just one last comment. I'm not expecting you to respond to this. This is my sarcasm. So word of disclaimer, this is from Tanya. Did I miss your $750,000 in funding?
Did you what?
Did I miss your $750,000 in funding?
Yeah.
Like I said, you don't have to respond to that. That's my sarcasm, directly targeted. But anyway, thank you for your work. Sorry we missed your $750,000 award, but we thank you for all of your work. You're amazing, and I appreciate everything you've been doing.
And I think, Dave, you meant to say that Hike the Heights is on Saturday, June the 4th.
Yes, Saturday, June the 4th. Thank you. I love when Steve corrects me because it comes from love. So I don't have no problem with that. It's Saturday, June the 4th. Our first one back in the park in 3 years.
All right. But and it certainly makes sense for you to have a van station there as well. Emily, do you have a question or a comment?
I have a comment, and yeah, sort of like a question comment. Yeah, this sounds amazing. I'm so happy that it's happening. I had no idea, so that's why I'm even happier that I'm in the community board. And also, the first thing that came to mind when you were chatting about, or just like informing us, was how, because I love compounding services. So it's like, I like how you're incorporating community services. And I just thought about the first presentation that we had, how it was about mental health for adolescents.
Yes.
Anything that maybe you could, or maybe you are, and maybe I missed it, how you're like also including that into the services that you're giving.
I thank you. You're correct. Because the books really help the teenagers when they see a different way to think about this. And one of the things I forgot to mention was there are new antivirals out that they're not telling our people a lot about. We're still checking on the phone numbers, but if you get sick from COVID now, they do have treatments for you. And there is a hotline number you're supposed to call. We're testing the number out because it's not working as well as we should, but they do have pills and an injection you can take that will help you recover faster and not have to be hospitalized. So when I get more information on that, I will get it to Steve. But if someone does get COVID test positive and has symptoms, they can get more than Tylenol and Advil now. There's a lot more available to help us get through this. The lady mentioned it in the beginning, but I want to let you know it's real, it's out there. And it does come in a day or two when things work the right way.
Well, Dave, if you have any questions about the availability of the antivirals, you should reach out to Pauline Ferranti.
Okay.
Who's still with us on this call tonight. She's our liaison with the health department.
Okay. But we have, final thing I'm gonna tell you is I know there's a lot of complaints about the mask and all that. And I talk to people on the street. You have no control of what everyone else is doing. You understand? You have no control. My best advice I give people is wear your 95 and you'll survive. You don't have control, especially to my seniors. I said, if you wear the blue mask, at least double up, but wear the 95. And I keep special packs of 95 masks stashed away and I give them out to seniors. I try to make sure seniors have 95. But you're not gonna get everyone masking up anymore. It's just not gonna happen in America.
So your line is wear your N95 and you'll survive.
Yes.
That's your line?
Wear your 95 and you'll survive.
Very good. Very good.
I'm still here, so that's proof.
Yeah, Pauline, I think the health department should adopt that slogan. That's a great slogan. Very good. Dave, it's always worthwhile listening to you. Emily, I'm coming over in a half an hour to help you finish that meal. Are you giving me the finger? What is that?
It's a fork.
Oh, the fork. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Dave.
Thank all of you. Please keep up your good work. And Jay Mazur, we take pride that 132 has the highest vaccination rate in Washington Heights. We're not giving all the credit to the hospital, even though we work with them. Have a good day.
All right, thank you, Dave. Okay, old business. I sent the board members the latest report from DEP on service calls for the month of April. 185 calls from people in Board 12, and the top 3 issues all relate to noise. Construction before and after hours, 57 calls. Construction equipment, another 16 calls. Noise from alarms, 13 calls. Street and sidewalk cleanliness ratings, I forgot to look them up. Update on the water main and sewer installation projects. I also sent the latest report from DDC, 2 separate emails to the committee members. The major water main and gas main installation project is due to be completed at the end of this month on May 27th. I added recycling statistics to old business because I want to start getting regular monthly reports from sanitation so we can track how we're doing on recycling. We should have been doing this for years. And I called sanitation, but I'm waiting for them to call me back. So hopefully next month we'll start getting recycling statistics for our district. Is there any other old business? No. Under new business, I put down the.
Yes.
Yes, what? Where are you?
Old business.
Old business. Ms. I recognize OC Cabinet for the purpose of discussing old business.
Right. In terms of the textile recycling, I just want to report that I went down to 116th Street and Broadway 2 weeks ago, and it's a disaster. Nobody was there. I was waiting for an hour. Nobody showed up. And people are leaving bags with textile recycling and just leave it on the street. And so it was very discouraging, I should say. And I think that if I understand there is some funding issues, but if they are promoting or if they are advertising that they're going to be in one particular location in specific day, they should stick to it. Because if they can't, then cancel it.
So was there a tent there? Was there anything indicating that they were doing textile collections? Nothing at all.
Nothing. They were not there yet when I arrived. So, I mean, and I waited for an hour and they didn't show up on time. So I had to leave.
And can you remember what time you were there?
I was there, I think a little before 9 and I left at 9:40 or something. We're supposed to be there at 9, between 9 and noon. And they were not.
Okay. I sent an email to the woman who does, I guess, community relations for the Green Markets to ask her for an update about textile recycling at Isham Street, but I didn't get an answer yet.
It should be in all of our farmers markets.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, as soon as I get a response, I'll look back.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so under new business, I believe I also passed this around to the committee members. We received a notice from the Communal Life is Precious program. And actually the community board also sent out a email blast with the Life is Precious flyer. They're currently accepting referrals for the program at the Washington Heights site, which is at 2500 Amsterdam Avenue. I think it's around 183rd or 184th Street. Open all year round and continue to provide services to our Latina teens and their families in person and remotely, art therapy, music therapy, tutoring services, youth development groups, civic engagement, weekly family engagement support groups in Spanish, weekly English classes for families, weekly creative family groups in Spanish, referrals to food programs and other needed family resources, and case management sessions with the teens and their families. And as we've discussed before, this is a very important program dealing with preventing suicides and other stresses that Latina teenagers might experience. So if you need the information, you can check your emails. You would have received it from the community board office, and I believe you should also have received it from me. Now, let's talk a bit about the presentation earlier on the Brownfield cleanup plan for 408 West 207th Street. We have a limited opportunity to try to submit any comments we might have. I believe the deadline is May the 9th, which is Monday. So do the committee members have some thoughts about what we might want to say to the State Department of Environmental Conservation about this plan?
Yes, they should have more monitoring on the south side of 206th Street between 9th and 10th Avenue to protect residents that living across the street from the development. And I thought that they are moving debris or soil or contaminated soil at night when there is technically less traffic or less people on the street. So if there is any like, I don't know, like soil flying off the truck, then at least there are fewer people on the street that can be affected by that. I don't know why it's not the case, because I know they do it with the nuclear material. Can we find out if they can hold the material at night?
Well, I think, this is part, I mean, we could ask, but I don't know how feasible it is, because they're, this is part of their construction activity. They're digging out and excavating and then filling up the trucks and sending the trucks off. They're not going to be doing that at night. You don't want them doing construction activity at night either. I mean,
it's not the constructions, it's the actual transport.
All right, well, all right, so fill up the trucks, keep them on the site, and only send them off at night. Is that your suggestion?
That is correct.
Well, I'd say one comment I want to make is I want to make sure that we find out about the truck route system.
Right.
And they limit the routes as much as possible to within the community.
And also, Steve, I wonder if without
Steve,
I'm sorry. Is that Sally?
well, I'm sorry if I interrupted anyone. I'll just shoot it up. I wonder if without knowing what's going to be on the site precisely, whether or not we can even thoroughly review. So I don't know if it's worth commenting that our ability to review this was limited by the fact that there was no information available to us regarding what planned to be built on the site. So we had to take their word for it that it would be, for example, 100% coverage, which seems unlikely on a site that big.
Well, I mean that's really not the subject of this particular.
Actually, my hand was up and no one recognized me.
and my hand is up too, just so I, you know.
Then you should go first because your hand is up.
I'll get to the two of you in just a moment, please. But to answer Sally, really the subject of this proceeding is not the development itself, it's the cleanup. And so really whether they put up unfortunately, whether or not they put up a 50-story building, a 40-story building, a 30-story building is not germane to the department, to this proceeding before the Department of Environmental Conservation. But
I guess, yeah, my comment was,
what is relevant as far as I'm concerned is that we were not sent, I think she admitted it, that we were not sent the package. It was not received by the community board office, and we were listed as an official repository for the documents, so that in the material that was sent out by DEC, any member of the public who wanted to find out more about this cleanup theoretically should have been able to go to the community board office and examine the documents, but we didn't have them. And I think that's that may be the first comment that I would make.
I agree.
Okay, Jay, up to you now.
Well, actually, I'm sort of glad people interrupted me. They made most of the point I would have made if I had been recognized, just as a matter of procedure, Steve. It actually isn't your job as committee chair to respond to what other board members are saying. If you wanted to make a comment after everyone spoke, I think that would be more appropriate and timely in the future, actually. But I think what both you and Sally said are the points. We weren't given the information, and we weren't given a chance to make the evaluations this committee is here to make. And those are the most salient points. And actually, we don't know what sort of a structure is going to be there. And we don't know what health questions might be engendered by any structure that is there, so, such as air quality problems and whatever. And that is somewhat germane to the field of this committee. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Okay, Tanya.
Yes. So I have, as far as a new business item, there was an
Now, before we get off the topic about the Brownfield program and any comments we might have, does anyone else have anything they want to add? Okay, so again, I'll try to write something up by Monday and try to get Eliezer to agree that we can submit it to a DEC. All right, Tanya.
Yes, so there was an article today about state officials working on a legislation that would designate, that would protect low-income communities from harmful facilities. And it's part of the state's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which was signed into law in 2019. And basically, they're looking at communities where they're saying that there are some communities that are targeted for harmful environmental facilities and other sort of things, whereas other less disadvantaged communities are sort of protected from that. And so this legislation would designating, identifying where these communities are that are being impacted by what you call extensive exposure to environmental hazards just because they are in low-income communities is ongoing. And they are asking, they have a website where New Yorkers have until July 7th to add their thoughts on the plan. The designations will be used to target funding also for resilient and renewable infrastructure in those communities as well. Well, they were mentioning large swaths of the city, including Port Morris and Bronx, Red Hook and Brooklyn, Astoria and Queens would be defined as disadvantaged under the proposal, but the criteria, the boundaries of how the communities are going to be designated as disadvantaged are still something that's being worked out. And that's why I think they're looking for community comment. I think that's really important because I think a lot of times, these sort of issues sometimes get lost when we talk about environmental impacts, where literally we see low-income communities that are being subjected to facilities that are harmful, that are causing harm. That's why you see a lot more asthma cases and other sort of things in low-income communities because of the fact that they are exposed to more of these toxins, and these facilities are allowed to do their business in the way they're doing it or whatever. And so I just, felt that that's something that we should be thinking about, looking at, and encouraging our community to have a voice in, and seeing if this is something that should be of concern to our community, and whether we should be encouraging our residents to also add their thoughts by July 7th to this plan and educating folks about what this plan is.
Are you looking at that article now? Do you have a copy?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I can send it right to you. But it was in New York Crane's New York business today.
All right. Well, I can't. I have difficulty accessing Crane's New York business.
Yeah, I know I have a subscription, but I'll copy and paste it, the whole thing.
All right. Could you
send it in an email? Mm-hmm.
You want to send it to all the committee members?
Yeah, I'll do that right now. But yeah, I just think that's something, you should look at it and, so they're trying to come up with the boundaries, like what communities are going to be designated, right, as being adversely impacted. And I, again, I don't know where this community stands because I don't think that the discussions really, we don't get into those type of discussions, how, so.
Does it make it clear what type of facilities they're referring to?
I mean, it could be, it's but basically what they're saying, you see a lot of this stuff. You see power plants, garbage facilities, like a lot of like sewage facilities and other sort of things that get dumped in, minority communities. The manufacturing stuff, yeah.
Well, the clearest example in our area is probably the the sewage treatment plant at 145th in West Harlem. But in our community, I think that maybe what we could look at is the fact that that at 215th Street we have sanitation garages for
Yes.
for 4 or 5 different districts, which violates the city charter.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, you're right. I was thinking about that too. Yes, Steve. I think that's important. Yeah.
We have 2 garages that belong to districts in the Bronx. We have 1 garage that belongs to a district on the Upper East Side. We should only have we should only have a garage for District 12. I mean, to me, that's that might be the prime example we have. We don't have that much manufacturing. We don't. I don't think we want to get rid of the Con Edison power facilities, but I think we have a real issue with having sanitation garages that, by all rights, don't belong in our community.
And they mentioned that. They said it could get tougher to build waste trucking depots, sewage plants, and others. So they mentioned what, refer to kind of what you're talking about, as one example of that.
Okay, well, let's send the article around and let's talk about it in June, and that will give us time to still meet that deadline.
Yes, it would. All right, I'll send it to you now.
All right. Okay. All right, very good. All right, so are there any announcements?
Wait, I have a new business.
Oh, new business, Ms. Kamada.
Okay, so I did mention it a few months ago, but it's still a new business. We should invite Con Edison to speak to us about microgrid, because they start working on that in Brooklyn, and we should learn more quickly before they show up and just decide for us exactly where they're gonna station those microgrids. So, and that, in my view, should be an ongoing conversation with Con Edison. They have to start coming to our meeting and start telling us more, tell us what the plans for Inwood, Washington Heights, and how they plan to go about it.
Okay, well, forgive me for being ignorant, but what is a microgrid?
So microgrids are, there was a proposal a number of years ago, I think it was after Sandy, that kind of divide the city to much smaller sections. So Con Edison, well, let's say the power at the Con Edison on 23rd Street is going south, then not the entire south of 23rd Street will be in the dark. So the point is just to it's more like mitigate the blackout, and the areas, if there is a blackout, it's only going to be like in small sections like of the city, and so they don't need to cater to a large number of people at the same time. So those are the microgrids.
To limit the impact of possible blackouts.
Thank you. Yes, in a more like a proper English, yes.
Okay, so it's a good thing.
It is a good thing, but hold on a second. Do you want to live next to one of those? So let's be careful. Let's be really clear about, we don't know what's coming and where. That's what I'm saying. We should have Con Edison coming to speak to us on a regular basis about microgrid, or I don't know, any other variety of things you want to speak to them. But that should be something that we should be very careful and be, we should be on top of that and see what's exactly the plan for Inwood, Washington Heights.
All right. So let me inquire. Sally. Sally, do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that we had amazing turnout at our Earth Day Festival, and this weekend, if anyone wants to do some cleaning in the rain, we're doing 2 river sweep sites, one at Dyckman Pier and one at Northern Inwood Hill Park, Muskota Marsh.
I signed up for this one.
You signed up? Yay.
I'm sorry, that's this weekend?
Yes. The first Saturday is the 7th.
On Saturday. Okay. So I assume that falls under the rubric of announcements.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Are there any other announcements? I mean, that was a very good announcement. I don't think we need to have any other announcements.
I have an announcement. I don't know if this is good.
What is that?
So WEAC is having a few things happening. Let me just get to the email. Yeah. So they have a Lead-Free Kids virtual advocacy day to help end childhood lead poisoning in New York. So I can get that information to you. It says that it's going to be from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Yeah, but you don't have to be there the entire time. And then there's going to be a candidate forum with New York State Lieutenant Governor Thursday, May 12th at 6:30 p.m.
I'm on a conference call.
Okay, and then we're going to have a May membership meeting with New York State Governor candidates forum on May 14th, Saturday at 10 a.m. So I can forward that email to you.
Yeah, please, yeah, forward that. And you'll forward me the information about the advocacy day on lead poisoning?
Yep, it's all together.
Okay, very good. Okay, all right, thank you, Emily. All right, any other announcements? Okay, for our next meeting on June 2nd, I believe we're going to have the local captain for EMS come to us and give we used to have an annual report from EMS, and she'll be, there's a new captain there. She'll be coming to us to give a report. Actually, she sent me a report, which I will forward to you with statistics as of the end of April. And when she comes to us next month, she will have updated it with information current as of the end of May. And I'm hoping to also get the director of the Climate and Clean Energy Program from the Natural Resources Defense Council to come and speak to us as well. All right, so I think we can adjourn the meeting at 9:08 p.m. I think I see a general consensus to adjourn. Is that correct?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, very good. All right, thank you all, and we'll be in touch on the letter to go to State DEC on the Brownfield cleanup and on the resolution concerning the psych beds at the Allen Hospital. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.